Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. We are doing a deep dive today into something that, well, on the surface, it might sound a little dry, maybe like pure operational housekeeping, but it's actually one of the most critical accelerators for modern business efficiency. We're talking about intelligent shift scheduling, and we're looking at a fundamental, really a strategic shift moving operations from that time-consuming, error-prone world of manual planning to an AI-guided approach.
It's so crucial to frame this correctly for you listening. This isn't just another IT upgrade.
Yeah.
It's a necessary strategic realignment of how you manage your workforce. And the reason it's so relevant right now is that the old ways building schedules by hand or using basic digital calendars, they are secretly and constantly driving up payroll costs.
And creating massive friction. I think massive friction is the perfect phrase for it.
It is.
We're talking about these high-stakes operations, right? Like healthcare, transportation, retail, where just one unplanned absence, one little conflict can force managers into hours of reactive, low-value rework. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is where the strategic value is. So our mission today is really to unpack precisely how moving to an AI-guided approach hits the bottom line, that quantifiable ROI, and also how it enforces fairness for the workforce.
And reduces risk.
And critically, how it systematically reduces the operational risk that just comes with human error in scheduling.
So the goal here is tightening that link between your staffing levels and the very real sort of fluctuating on-the-ground needs of the business.
Right.
If you can automate the scheduling and that awful process of call-outs, then managers aren't just saving time. They're reclaiming hours every single week to do what they're supposed to do. Lead, train, and focus on strategy.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we dive into the solution, we have to really confirm the scale of the problem. We keep using phrases like hidden tax and massive friction. For the listener who thinks their Excel spreadsheet system is, good enough, how exactly does building schedules by hand drain time and drive up actual costs?
The cost is enormous.
Yeah.
And it's enormous precisely because it's so distributed and hard to see until you centralize it. So just think about a frontline manager. Let's call her Elena. She's responsible for, say, 50 employees across 3 different roles.
Okay.
And they all require specific certifications. They work under different union rules, local laws.
That sounds like a daily nightmare already.
It is. It is. So this manager, Elena, she spends countless hours just chasing availability texting, emailing, trying to match qualifications to open slots.
Just trying to solve the puzzle.
It's a puzzle. And she's retrying combinations over and over. And that delay, that constant rework, the chase, leads directly to 2 major cost drivers. First, unplanned overtime because you can't fill a shift fast enough.
Right. You're desperate.
And second, that knee-jerk reliance on really expensive external agency hires just to plug the holes.
And the sources put a pretty startling number on that financial drain. This isn't just an inconvenience. It's a systemic drag.
Yeah, that's right. When you look at businesses that are still relying on these manual or even semi-manual processes, studies consistently show that unintentional schedule padding.
What's that? Just staffing up to be safe?
Yeah, just adding an extra person just in case. That, along with just simple scheduling errors, raises total labor costs by about 3 to 6%.
3 to 6%. That's staggering. Why is that a hidden tax? I mean, if labor is your biggest expense, why isn't that inefficiency more obvious?
Because it's baked into the budget. It gets categorized as overtime or agency fees, not scheduling error cost. So you just sort of absorb that 3 to 6% margin because the process is slow, it's decentralized, and it's prone to just over-relying on premium labor.
So we're talking about tools that can claw that entire margin back.
Explicitly designed to do that, yeah, by ensuring a perfect alignment between what you need and who you have without all that padding.
That level of inefficiency is it's unsustainable. So if that's the cost of chaos, what's the core shift here? This is where it gets really interesting. We have to move beyond just digital rotas. What are the must-have capabilities that really define this intelligent approach?
The defining element is the intelligence that's embedded in the system's decision-making, its ability to automate these really complex constraints. And we're seeing vendors like Working AI and ShiftLink really pioneering this.
Okay.
The foundational capability is the AI solver and auto-scheduling engine.
Let's get into that. When you say solver, what is it? What does it actually solve? It sounds like more than just filling a slot.
It's solving a massive multivariable optimization problem that, frankly, our brains just struggle with.
Right.
A human manager can hold, maybe 3 or 4 variables in their head effectively.
Yeah.
The AI solver is simultaneously processing Dozens. Role coverage, specific certifications like CPR, rest period requirements, shift preferences, historical fairness data, all of it,
All at once.
all at once. And then it builds a complete shift plan from scratch based on all those interwoven rules.
So instead of a manager spending a whole day trying to fit these jigsaw pieces together, the AI just presents a legally compliant, optimally staffed roster.
A roster that needs minimal human adjustment. That's the goal. It delivers a finished product, not some rough draft. And, crucially, it can incorporate employee preferences automatically, which is a huge boost for morale.
But that pristine schedule only lasts until the first person calls in sick.
Right.
In the old system, that one call creates a domino effect of texts and phone calls. How does an intelligent system handle that inevitable disruption?
That requires what's called real-time responsiveness and non-disruptive rescheduling. The system has to instantly see a disruption, a call off, someone's late, and then rebalance the coverage automatically.
So if you're suddenly down a person,
If you're down a person, the AI can instantly identify the single, qualified non-overtime employee who is available and then just offer them the shift through their phone in seconds.
you use the term non-disruptive. What does that mean in practice for everyone else on that schedule?
It means the AI tries to make the absolute smallest set of edits possible to fix the conflict.
Ah, I see.
The last thing you want is the system changing 4 other people's break times just to cover one absence. Preserving that routine is key for morale. A chaotic, constantly changing schedule is just a fast track to burnout.
Stability and predictability are huge for retention. Okay, let's talk about trust. If an AI is making these calls, how do you guarantee fairness? How do you stop it from being this, black box that employees just don't trust?
That's where audit trails and transparency become, well, non-negotiable features. For a system like this to work, trust has to be built into the process. So when a platform like ShiftLink automates a call-out, it creates timestamp records of the entire decision tree.
So if an employee asks, hey, why was I called for overtime instead of my coworker? The system can just pull the data.
Exactly. It can show. Well, employee X was unavailable. Employee Y had already hit their overtime limit. You were the next qualified person based on your preferences. This transparency, it really strengthens fairness, it cuts down on grievances, and it gives you irrefutable evidence for any kind of regulatory review.
That moves compliance from a reactive scramble to something that's just embedded in how you operate.
It does.
Speaking of compliance, what about preventing errors in the first place? Are there guardrails?
Absolutely essential. Compliance guardrails have to be automated. The system needs to stop a manager from making a mistake before the assignment is even finalized.
So it will physically block them.
It'll issue a hard stop. If manager Elena tries to assign someone who doesn't have the right certification, or if it breaks a mandatory rest period law, the system will pop up an immediate warning and prevent the change.
It feels like that capability alone removes a massive layer of risk for the organization.
It's the whole point. You're shifting the compliance burden from a fallible human manager to an infallible rule engine. The AI treats every rule as a hard constraint.
So we've covered the pain points, we've covered the core features. Let's bring this all back to the C-suite metrics. What does this all really mean for a business trying to stay ahead? Let's connect the AI solver, the audit trails, all of it, back to money, time, and talent.
This is where the ROI stops being theoretical and becomes, actual cash. Because the system eliminates that padding and optimizes who's working when, organizations typically cut their total payroll spend by more than 5% on average.
5% on labor is massive, but how? How is that 5% actually realized? Is it just from cutting overtime?
It's mainly from 2 places. First, yes, a huge reduction in unplanned, expensive overtime because shifts are filled proactively. And second, a major drop in using high-cost agency staff. When you know exactly who's qualified and available internally, you just don't need to reach for those external resources as often.
I can see the cost savings, but I feel like the managerial time savings might be even more impactful long term.
They're strategically huge. These automated tools cut the admin time spent just building rosters by roughly 75%.
Wow.
Think about manager Elena spending a whole day on next week's schedule. Now she's spending maybe a couple of hours just validating what the AI came up with.
And restoring 75% of that time lets managers shift from being administrators to being coaches.
To being leaders.
Yeah.
Performance coaching, training, process improvement, that's a direct lever for quality.
100%. Okay, what about operational risk? In places like hospitals or utilities, 247 coverage is non-negotiable. The reliability of the scheduling tool itself has to be a strategic factor.
It absolutely has to be. If your scheduling tool goes down, your whole operation basically disappears.
Hmm.
So vendor reliability is a core metric. ShiftLink, for example, they publish a metric of 99.9% uptime and 247 support.
Which is key.
That level of certainty is what lowers your business risk. The system is always on, even when things go wrong.
But 99.9% uptime is a huge claim. What questions should you, the listener, be asking vendors to really verify that, especially during, say, a huge seasonal hiring rush?
That's a critical question. You have to go beyond that general uptime number and ask about performance during specific stress tests. And you need real customer references, not a case study, but someone who can tell you how the system performed during their last unplanned crisis. That real-world data is way more valuable.
That makes sense. Okay, finally, let's go back to talent. In industries that are battling high turnover, how does this help with retention and burnout?
When a system uses fair, consistent logic everywhere, it builds trust. The transparency makes sure shifts are distributed equitably, and it reduces that perception of favoritism or unfairness, which is just a massive contributor to burnout.
And I imagine just being able to factor in employee preferences helps people feel seen.
It does. It removes the unnecessary friction. If the app is easy to use and gives people clear, instant info, it just improves their work-life balance. The system itself becomes a positive force for engagement.
This all sounds transformative, but for our listener who runs really complex, multi-site operations, maybe across different states or countries, how do they make sure the software can actually grow with them? Scalability must be non-negotiable.
Scalability is paramount, and it requires systems to manage this complex centralization while still allowing for local autonomy.
That seems like a paradox. Central rules, but local control?
It is, but technology can solve it.
Yeah.
The central system enforces the hard constraints, the legal stuff, the core qualifications. But local managers keep control over soft constraints and immediate needs. A tool like ShiftLink does this by letting you post multi-vacancy shifts in seconds, segmented by location, but it's always routed through that central rule set first.
And what about the implementation? Complexity usually means headaches.
Well, the simplicity of how these are delivered now is a major advantage. High-quality systems today are all cloud-based SaaS with automatic zero-downtime upgrades, like you see with Working AI.
So no servers to install, no big maintenance cycles.
Exactly. No dedicated IT team needed to manage the software. The focus shifts entirely from managing tech to just optimizing your workforce. You can get up and running really fast.
Okay, so before our listener commits to one of these platforms, let's circle back to what you said about trust and the AI. What's the one tactical question they have to ask a vendor?
Beyond references, you need to get deep confirmation on AI transparency. The vendor has to be able to clearly explain the logic.
Why it made a certain choice.
Precisely. If the AI overrides an employee's preference to fill a critical gap, you need to understand why that decision was prioritized. How are the constraints weighted? How is fairness measured? If the vendor can't give you a clear, auditable explanation, then you are buying a black box that your employees will never trust.
So if we synthesize all of this, it really seems like intelligent scheduling lets a business move from being chronically reactive, always fighting fires, to being planned, predictable, and compliant.
That is the entire strategic value proposition right there. You gain three things almost immediately. Time saved, a 75% cut in admin work, cost contained, that 5% or more cut in payroll, and maybe most importantly, operational certainty. You're shifting from guessing and reacting to strategic optimization.
And that gets us to the long-term value. The real ROI isn't just cutting costs today, it's about the data you're collecting for the future.
Absolutely. The historical records these systems generate let you move from just building next week's schedule to true proactive demand forecasting. You can analyze patterns of call-offs, of demand spikes, and staff precisely to the real need, not just some historical average. It fundamentally changes how you plan for your peaks and troughs. So the provocative question for you, the listener, is this. If you could restore 75% of your best manager's scheduling time, what high-value strategic work would you immediately shift them towards that currently just isn't getting done?
That is the question that defines productivity in the modern enterprise. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into AI-driven workforce efficiency and the incredible strategic gains hiding inside optimized scheduling.